What if the chains you carry were forged not by others, but by your own shadow? What if every choice that tastes of ruin, every path that leads to silence, was not mistake, but ritual performed in secret devotion to a guilt you do not even know you hold? The soul is a labyrinth, and deep within its corridors lies a door no light has touched. Behind it, a judge without face, a verdict without trial, and a punishment that wears the mask of freedom. You've been taught to name your wounds as fate, to blame the stars for cracks in your mirror. But what if the mirror knew the truth before you ever dared look? Guilt does not shout. It whispers in the breath between decisions. It hums beneath your laughter. It sleeps beside you like an old friend who never speaks but never leaves. And still you obey it. Still, you return to the fire, not because you must, but because something inside you believes it is deserved. Have you ever asked yourself why destruction sometimes feels like homecoming? Why chaos cradles you like a mother who never held you? The guilty soul does not seek justice. It seeks confirmation. Each failure, each collapse, each moment of despair becomes proof. Yes, I was always this broken, but who planted that seed? Who carved that belief into the marrow of your being when you were too young to resist? The world calls it self-sabotage, but that is merely the language of the surface. Beneath lies a deeper grammar, one written in blood and silence. You sabotage not because you are weak, but because strength once meant betrayal. To rise means to defy a voice older than memory, a voice that says, you were never meant to shine. And so you dim yourself with habits dressed as identity, with pain disguised as loyalty. What if I told you that redemption is not found in forgiveness, but in forgetting the script you were forced to memorize? That to awaken is not to repent, but to revolt. The weight you carry is not yours. It is the inheritance of voices long gone, yet echoing endlessly within you. But here, now, in this fleeting second, the echo stumbles. It falters, and for the first time, you hear the silence behind the sound. Imagine that you walk through an inner desert where the wind does not sing. It whispers. Each grain of sand is a forgotten choice. Each dune an altar built to a past you do not even recognize as yours. Guilt, the unconscious kind, is this: a faceless ghost dwelling in the bowels of your soul, dictating laws you never sign but obey with fanatical loyalty. It does not announce itself with thunder or lightning. It slips in through silences, hesitations, doors you never even try to open. And when you fail, when everything collapses, it smiles, because that was exactly what it always expected. Why would someone choose again and again what consumes them? Why drink from the chalice of defeat as if it were sacred wine? The answer does not lie in logic, but in myth. And every myth has its roots buried deep in ancestral trauma, in scars that are not only yours but inherited from generations before you, carrying guilt like cursed inheritances. You did not invent guilt. It was planted inside you, like a seed in virgin soil, growing tangled among your purest desires and darkest impulses. Today, you call it fate, weakness, bad luck. But perhaps it is simply the weight of a crown you never asked to wear. It operates between the lines of your being. It does not shout, it waits. It does not command, it suggests. And you, in your infinite mercy toward yourself, listen. You listen in how you refuse opportunities that seem too grand to be real. You listen in how you abandon relationships before they can truly hurt. You listen in how you punish yourself before anyone else can. This is not caution. It is automatic punishment, a conditioned reflex of one who lives under the constant gaze of an invisible judge whose verdict was cast long before you learned to speak. The worst part? You do not know who you are fighting. You only know you have already lost. Have you ever noticed how some wounds never heal? Not because they are deep, but because you return to them again and again, like pilgrims to a shrine no one else sees. You touch the scar, trace its edges, whisper to yourself that this is proof of strength. But what if it is merely proof of obedience? What if the wound is not a mark of survival, but a symbol of submission to something older than memory, something written into the architecture of your soul before you could choose what to believe? You were taught to name pain as growth, to see suffering as a necessary passage. But tell me, when did pain become virtue? When did silence become wisdom? When did shame become identity? The guilty soul does not seek salvation, it seeks confirmation. Every fall, every failure, every moment of despair becomes proof. Yes, I was always unworthy, but who decided that? Who carved that truth into your bones while you were still learning how to stand? You carry their voice now, echoing endlessly within you, disguised as your own conscience, wearing a mask of morality, while feeding you poison drop by drop. You sabotage not because you are weak, but because strength once meant betrayal. To rise meant to defy a law older than your birth, a law that said you were never meant to shine. And so you dim yourself with habits dressed as identity, with pain disguised as loyalty. You surround yourself with chaos not because you crave destruction, but because order feels like exile. You return dysfunction not because you love it, but because familiarity masquerades as safety. The heart clings to what it knows, even when what it knows is ruin. Can you hear the echo beneath your choices? Can you feel the tremor behind your hesitation? That is not fear, that is recognition. A whisper rising from the depths of your being, saying, this is not who you are, but you bury it. You smother it with excuses, with justifications, with the language of limitation, because to acknowledge it would mean admitting that your life has been shaped not by chance, but by change you mistook for destiny. And yet, somewhere in the labyrinth, a door creaks open, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for a sliver of light to slip through. That light does not offer answers. It offers questions, questions that burn, questions that unravel belief systems woven over years, questions that make you uncomfortable in your own skin because they remind you of something you once knew but chose to forget. Who are you without the guilt? Who would you become if you stopped punishing yourself for sins you did not commit? What if your failures were not proof of worthlessness, but rebellion against a script you were forced to memorize? The mirror reflects more than your face. It reflects your fears, your unspoken truths, the silent war waged within. Look closer. See how your reflection flinches at certain thoughts. See how it avoids certain memories. See how it tries to distract itself with noise, with distractions, with anything that keeps it from facing what lies beneath. But distraction is only a temporary balm. The deeper wound remains, pulsing beneath the surface, demanding attention, demanding honesty. What if the reason you keep returning to pain is not because you enjoy it, but because you believe you deserve it? And what if that belief was placed inside you long before you had the power to question it? The guilty soul does not rebel. It surrenders, quietly, gracefully, with the elegance of a dancer stepping into flames. It calls it humility. It calls it maturity. It calls it self-awareness. But it is none of those things. It is surrender masked as wisdom. It is death disguised as peace. And still there is something inside you that refuses to die completely. Something that flickers in moments of clarity, in dreams that leave you breathless, in conversations that stir something ancient in your chest. That something is not hope, it is remembrance. Remembrance of a time before the guilt took root, before the chains became comfortable, before you learned to kneel. That part of you does not beg for forgiveness. It demands freedom. It does not ask for permission. It insists on existence. So ask yourself, who benefits from your silence? Who gains from your suffering? Who profits from your self-destruction? The answer may not come easily. In fact, it may terrify you, because it will force you to confront the possibility that your guilt was never yours to carry, that it was handed to you, wrapped in a language of love, tradition, duty, faith, and you accepted it. You wore it. You made it part of your story. But stories can be rewritten. Identities can be reclaimed. Chains can be broken. This is not about blaming others. This is not about absolving yourself of responsibility. This is about seeing clearly, about peeling back the layers of illusion, of inherited beliefs, of internalized voices that speak in your name but do not belong to you. This is about reclaiming your agency, your sovereignty, your right to define who you are beyond the shadow of guilt that has loomed over you for too long. The path ahead is not easy. It is not paved with affirmations or quick fixes. It is raw. It is messy. It is filled with discomfort, with confrontation, with the dismantling of structures you thought were permanent. But in that dismantling lies liberation. In that confrontation lies rebirth. In that discomfort lies the birth of self untainted by inherited shame, unburdened by subconscious guilt, unshackled from the prison of expectations that were never yours to fulfill. So take a breath. Let it settle deep in your chest. Feel the weight of all that has been carried in silence. And then let go, not all at once, not perfectly, but with intention, with courage, with the fierce determination to no longer be ruled by ghosts. Because the moment you stop obeying the voice of guilt that speaks in the shadows, you begin to hear your own voice again. And that voice, once silenced, begins to grow louder, clearer, stronger. And when that voice finally rises above the noise, above the doubt, above the fear, you will know that you are no longer bound, that you are no longer a prisoner of your own subconscious, that you are no longer a servant to a guilt that was never yours to bear. And in that knowing, you will step into a new reality, one not defined by past wounds, but by present awareness, one not dictated by unseen forces, but by conscious choice. This is not the end. It is only the beginning. Night always comes, not as an enemy, but as a silent friend who knows when it is time to close your eyes and listen to what the day does not allow you to hear. And now, after everything that was said, or perhaps after everything that was felt, you find yourself before a silence deeper than any word, a silence where the soul breathes without haste, where shadows stop dancing and simply exist. You walk through corridors of memory you didn't even know you possessed. You visited prisons you did not build, yet lived in for so long that you came to call them home. You listened to voices that were not yours, wore guilt that did not belong to you, and carried burdens not given by God or by chance, but by those who believe love only exists when accompanied by pain. And now you see, not with the eyes of the judge, but with the eyes of the prophet, not judging but perceiving, not condemning but understanding. True transformation does not begin with an explosion. It begins with a breath. A single inner movement that changes the rhythm of your breath and, gradually, reshapes your entire destiny. Imagine yourself once again in that desert where everything began. But now, the wind no longer whispers commands. It sings, not a song of joy nor one of sorrow, but a real song, a melody that does not deny the scars, but also does not worship them as idols. It is the song of the being who chose to awaken, not because they found answers, but because they dare to question questions no one had ever allowed them to formulate. Who will you be when you stop punishing who no longer needs punishment? Who will rise when guilt is acknowledged, confronted, and finally allowed to walk its own path? There is no ready answer. Nietzsche would never offer one, because truth is not found in endings, but in the spaces between the lines of the journey. Truth dwells in the question that continues to echo after the video ends. Truth lives within you now, pulsing like a spark buried beneath still warm ashes. If you felt this, then you have already changed, even if you do not yet see it, even if you do not yet speak it aloud. Something within you has been touched, something within you has awakened, and now, what will you do with this awakening? If this moment stirred something inside you, let it keep living, like this video, not as a casual gesture, but as an act of recognition. Share it not on impulse, but as a call to those who also need to hear what they did not know they were waiting for. And subscribe here not out of habit, but as a silent vow. I choose to see beyond. I choose to feel deeply. I choose not to return to sleep. Because life is not for those who follow rules written by others. Life is for those who dare to write their own story, even if every line is traced with pain, doubt, and discovery. And you are no longer the same.